Good morning, colleagues, friends.
Morning.
Sanbonan.
Yebo.
Tobe.
Ahe.
Tobe.
Thabela.
All right, since we're in Gauteng, Dumela.
Ahe.
Oh, good. Good morning, colleagues. It's a very special honor and a great privilege to be with you this morning. As Morris has just reminded me, it was indeed a very special privilege in 2001 to be on the program with so many colleagues and friends that I certainly met during the course of that Global Executive Development Program. And I still have fond memories of that program, even if it may be, 20 odd years ago. I should also mention, Morris and colleagues and friends, that it is that program that also then laid the foundations for me in my role as Vice Chancellor later. In roughly 2010, let me just correct myself. Roughly 2010, to come back to GIBS, colleagues at GIBS, to say, can we put together a university global executive leadership program, purpose designed for the University of Johannesburg? And so I have a long memory of really excellent relationships. And it's striking, I think, if the penny is not dropped, it's striking that UJ reached out to UP to say, can you help us with our 30-odd senior executives, including colleagues who we saw in particular women colleagues, who we anticipated would take up leadership positions 5-8 years down the line, to work with us and with that team of about 35 leaders at the University of Johannesburg. And it's again an indication of the importance of collaboration alongside competition, I should add. And so it's really a great privilege and honor to be with you here this morning, but this time in the guise of the chair of Absa's Social Sustainability and Ethics Committee. And so I begin then by recognizing you, Morris, Louise, recognizing you, Anastasia, Faisal Mkhize, who is the Chief Executive Relationship Banking at Absa, and your colleagues who are joining you, Dr. Stephen Zwane, our Management Executive Corporate Citizenship at Absa, colleagues, distinguished guests. So it gives me a distinct pleasure, but more so great honor, to join you on this very special occasion when we launch this partnership to, as I put it in my own words, to open up the South African township entrepreneur black box. And as we dynamize this intractable, debilitating, and dehumanizing experience of youth disempowerment and unemployment, wicked problem. I suggest as we commence this work, Anastasia, that for far too often we are preoccupied with a focus on entrepreneurship as an end in itself, rather than as a means to examine and to find energizing and catalytic solutions to this debilitating phenomenon of non-performing and non-job creating local township, peri-urban and rural economies. Economies that are both connected to and disconnected from the mainstream formal economy. Far too often, we posit entrepreneurship as the holy grail, as the silver bullet that would somehow dissolve this wicked problem of an ever-expanding 3 million young people between the age of 15 and 24 who are neither in employment, in education, or training. That is 34.3% of that age group. It is worth noting also that the NEETs, as we call them, constitute a staggering 53% of the age group 15 to 35 years. And listen to this number. We're speaking of close to 10 million young people in that age group who sit with very little hope, very little expectation, and yet an expectation that the demographic dividend would have brought them into the mainstream of society and in the economy. And so we're faced with an emergency of catastrophic human proportions. Consider events recently, Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka followed by events in Kenya, perhaps not gone the full hog, so to speak, yet, as it then has gone more recently in the instance of Bangladesh, of young people revolting. And of course, if we just cast our mind back to the early 2000s of the Arab Spring, an uprising of extraordinary proportions, an uprising which has been smothered, we may say, which has been silenced, pushed to the margins, but which will again evoke in our societies, in our communities, the kind of disruption that we are uncomfortable with. And so, we are faced with an emergency of catastrophic human proportions that appears to be remarkably resilient to the hundreds of billions of public, private, and community-based rands spent on post-school education, on training, on entrepreneurship and employment creation initiatives over the last decade. We've thrown all this money at the problem, and the results are meager, to put it quite bluntly. What we've learned and what is to be done, and urgently so, are the questions that confront our newly forged partnership. What are the insights that we can glean from the multiple and evidently good-intentioned initiatives launched in the last decade and before, here in South Africa and abroad, in the much heralded entrepreneurial hubs of Kenya, of India, of China, of Brazil, of the USA, of Singapore, of Australia, of Malaysia, Bangladesh, and many others? And how is entrepreneurialism theory and activism instrumental in catalyzing and dynamizing these local economies, and in the process stitching these into the ostensibly resource-rich mainstream economies? These then are our hopes and ambitions for this partnership. For this partnership matters, it matters exceedingly so for our young people as it does for all of our people, and for the sustainability of our post-apartheid democracy project as it does for our nation-building ambitions. Turning to Absa very briefly itself, our strategic positioning is one that puts at the core of our existence the idea to be an active force for good in everything that we do. And so when Faisal leads relationship banking, that is what sits at his core. It sits at the core of his team members, in everything that we do, to be an active force for good. That is the leitmotif that drives this organization. And it's on that that you've so eloquently put earlier, Morris, is founded this idea of Absa empowering Africa's tomorrow together, one story at the time. And you'll have seen the billboards across this province, across the country, across the continent in our presence markets. East Africa, West Africa, Southern Africa, that makes the point your story matters. Your story matters, your dreams matters, your hope matters. Why? Because through funding and financing, we're seeking to enable you to realize those dreams and those ambitions, and for your story to unfold chapter by chapter by chapter. Our revised group strategy at Absa also places sustainability at the very center of our strategy. And this approach informs our sustainability vision and aspirations for Africa, our home. And so our commitment to a just, inclusive and sustainable future for all of our partners and stakeholders is underpinned by our purpose to empower Africa's tomorrow together, one story at a time. And so we spent quite a bit of time in the organization at executive level, at board level, to ask ourselves, how can we progress financial inclusion? How can financial inclusion, in which we invest as an organization like our peer banks here in South Africa and across the continent, but in particular here in South Africa, together with our peer banks, we invest something of the order of 2% of our profit after tax on financial inclusion. It's an imperative for us. But how does that financial inclusion catalyze these township economies that we speak, these peri-urban economies that we speak of, the rural economies that we speak? How does it catalyze? How does it connect the individual entrepreneur or the idea of the entrepreneur to the economy and dynamize that economy? And I'm sure you can begin to see the good intentions, but you can also see the scale of the challenge. 10 million young people, 15 to 35, not in education, not in employment, not in training. What are the ideas? What are the solutions? But you can also see my skepticism that if we believe that entrepreneurship is this holy grail, this silver bullet to unlock this 10 million giant problem, human problem that we're faced with, let's think again. But nonetheless, we know that entrepreneurialism and entrepreneurs can catalyze, can dynamize moribund local economies, economies disconnected from the mainstream economy, and draw our people into productive employment and begin to help us stitch together again a broken community, a broken nation. And so those are the questions that we asked ourselves. And it is out of that conversation that was born this idea of financial inclusion through entrepreneurship. And so how do we use this resource envelope to make a contribution in a manner that offers tactical, strategic interventions? So we can't solve the big problem, but in the efforts that we invest in at Absa, in financial inclusion, we can influence the situation, mindful of the scale of the challenge. And in this particular partnership, it is possible for us to put the microscope on some of these interventions that appear on the face of it to show success. And then we are able, through our scholarship, to open up this black box so that we can perhaps begin to more confidently connect the elements in this black box to a wider resource, quote-unquote, resource-rich mainstream economy. And so Dr. Zwane will elaborate more on this topic of financial inclusion through entrepreneurship. I want to end off simply by drawing attention to Absa's 3 sustainability pillars, being financial inclusion through entrepreneurship, that is to make intergenerational wealth creation accessible for all. The second one being our diversity and inclusion ambitions, an important imperative, a significant imperative, an exceedingly important imperative, I should say, for our nation. That is to enable our people to bring their true selves to work and to be a beacon of inclusion externally across our continent. And our third pillar is that of climate, and that is to contribute to Africa's transition in a way that is just and fair for all. And so I end then by saying, Morris and colleagues, we look forward to a partnership that is going to contribute in significant manners to helping us move our country forward. For this humanitarian crisis that we're faced with, we cannot continue to look the other way, or alternatively to throw hundreds of billions of rands at it without any solution evident, or not any solution, without hundreds of solutions available for us to be able to scale up and to achieve our grand ambitions. And so I wish you well, Anastasia, in your labors and in your intersectional work and in your interconnections that you will make possible. And I want to congratulate you, congratulate Stephen and the team at Absa on moving us all forward to this point. Ngiyabonga kakhulu.